All right, so that's one of the things that may happen on the gig. So feedback is not our friend. All right. How about a hand for Raphael? Yeah, you haven't seen but a bit of it yet. He's so bad. Anyway, so I just decided to just kind of explore, you know, some different territories there. Ending up with the 2-3 rumba clave, and I love that. So I think I'm gonna open it up for any immediate questions that you may have. So do you have any burning questions? Okay, good night.
I'll ask for them. Can you tell how you developed the independence to do the left foot clave and not throw yourself off?
Yeah, okay.
How'd you practice it?
Yeah, how I practice it? Okay, first of all, started with just the clave on the left foot. And obviously, if you're not used to playing it, it'll throw you off. The clave can be felt in duple meter and in triple meter. So I started off very simply. Okay, so I started out really simply, all right, at the bottom, developing just the 2-3 clave here. So. Now the first thing you want to do is get used to playing that rhythm in the left leg if you're not used to playing it. That's going to take a minute. It took me a long time. I'd be on the plane, sitting at home in front of the TV, riding in the car. Whenever I had a chance to just play that rhythm with the left leg, I took advantage of it. The very next thing I did was start to add the quarter notes on the cowbell. Once I'd established some sort of freedom and relaxation with that, the next step for me was to delve into both sides of the clave. So I said earlier, the clave can be felt in triplicate and in duple meter. So clave. Right hand is playing 16ths against the clave, okay? So, once you get comfortable with that phase of it, then trying to go from duple to triple meter. And then it's time to put it all on the kit. Okay. The easiest thing for me was to start, obviously, with cowbell, quarter notes, like I said before, but then trying to alter the cowbell pattern by adding 16ths to it. So instead of just straight quarters. Basically, the tumbao pattern works with this, but I like to think of the bass drum as an ad-lib instrument, floating in and out of the pattern, as to not to establish such a pattern on it, and that allows me a certain amount of creative freedom with it. but the basic pattern is this. Okay, any questions thus far? Wow, did it sound nice? Okay, so that's really the basis of it. And the goal here for me is to begin to incorporate the hands. Once the clave is rock solid, once you can just kind of turn it on and not think about it, then it allows you a certain amount of freedom to play across it, in and out of that duple and triple meter I was talking about. So it just allows you so much freedom once you have that. It gives you basically an ostinato pattern to create anything you want to across the drum kit. And I love it because you can use it in a lot of different applications. So that's basically how I started it. But I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. But jump in with both feet and give it a chance. All right? Any other questions? Somebody over here had a question. Did you have a question? Yeah. Okay.
So, you play with some successful bands, and I'm sure you play with a lot of different bands as well. What made Silly Dan, those types of bands, more successful than the others?
Ooh-wee.
What is the key?
You know what? In my humble opinion, well, first of all, I'm going to say, in reaction to your question, I don't think I'm the guy to answer that question. But from what I can tell, the difference in Steely Dan and you're saying some of the other bands that I've played with, as far as the success rate, that has a whole lot to do with the industry, has a lot to do with the state of the record industry at the time that those artists were putting out product, which is a totally different industry than we're living in now. But a lot of it did have to do with Donald and Walter's work ethic. Most of the people that I've worked for are very, very meticulous people. Maurice White, very, very meticulous. Not uptight, but just until it's right, we're not going to move into to the next step. Donald Fagen is the same way. Walter Becker is the same way. Bruce Hornsby is the same way. Bette Midler is one of the most demanding individuals on the planet. But I respect Bette, and we have a great working relationship because I know she knows exactly what she wants. So when she comes to you and says something, hey, try this or try this, it's because she's looking for something, or whatever. And she knows when she hears it, she knows when she doesn't hear it. In my estimation, that's the thing that kind of separates, as far as the music is concerned, separates those successful artists from the ones who weren't as successful. And then people who like to take artistic chances too. Earth, Wind & Fire was, and still is, was more so back in the day, a highly creative band. They were on the cutting edge doing a lot of things bands weren't even thinking about doing. And what I mean by that, and that goes beyond just a live performance, like in the studio. George Massenburg, one of the greatest engineers to ever grace the planet, was working very closely with David Foster and Maurice White putting together those records. Not just on the music side, but just making sure that sonically that they were superior. So if you listen to any Steely Dan record, it's sonically impeccable. When I recorded with them, I was one of maybe like 12 drummers. And it was funny because they had us stacked up like week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And people started calling each other, like when the sessions started happening, I think I was like maybe like the fourth or fifth guy down in the order, and I think I went in behind Vinny, and I don't know who came. I think Sterling Campbell or somebody came in behind me. But it was funny because they had each one of us to play every song that's on Two Against Nature, that album. I played every single track. I played the full kit on every track. I did tom overdubs. I just did some cymbal crashes and, you know, just various stuff that Donald and whatever they wanted. I was in New York for 5 days. I was in the studio for maybe like 8 to 10 hours a day. And it was just me and them, and the rhythm section, of course. And every guy had that kind of time with them. So, you know, a part of that is having the budget to bring in 12 drummers and cut that, you know what I mean? So, I mean, as far as what, you know, that's pretty much the best that I can answer that, you know. All the people that, like I said before, all the people I've worked for are just like basically musical snobs. They want it to be right, you know. And when you get to that level, it has to be right, you know. And right is what ever feels good to you in your soul creatively, you know. Any other questions? No.
Hey, Sonny, when you're doing those type of patterns, are you thinking Latin or are you just thinking different style?
Oh no, I'm definitely thinking. I want it to be as authentic as it possibly can be. I'm gonna tell a quick story about how I fell in love with this pattern, you know, with the groove. I was on the road with David Sanborn, and we were playing in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Don Elias and I, you know who Don Elias is? You guys know Don Elias? Drummers here, do you know who Don Elias is? Yes? No? Okay. I want you to give you some homework. I'm serious, because you need to know who he is, okay? Don Elias is was one of the greatest percussionists, okay? Played with Weather Report, Joni Mitchell, a whole host of people, David Sanborn. I mean, discography just as long as whatever, but he's legendary percussionist. So anyway, I was playing with him on the gig with David Sanborn. We walk into this small club in Puerto Rico, and it was 2 guys over in the corner, percussion setup, and 1 girl. The club was empty when we walked in. So we turned around and walked back out. We stood outside for about 10 minutes. And then after a while, we noticed that they started playing without anybody being in the club. So we walk in the club, and they had this killer rumba. They were dancing rumba. It was rumba night at this club. So I stood over in the corner with Don, and I was just blown away. I just fell in love with that groove. And that kind of motivated me to want to really learn it. So the thing to do is, if you're gonna delve into that type of stuff, you gotta go all the way there. You gotta be authentic about it. And I was telling, who was it today? Is it Chilo? I told him. Yeah, Chilo. That you know, if you're gonna do that, you want to be authentic. You want to, you know, in whatever style you play, you want to be authentic about it. You know, you want it to have that authentic sound, an authentic feel. You know, that's why I love this cat, Raphael. I mean, you know, it's the real deal. It's not, you know, it feels the way it's supposed to feel. He doesn't play at it. It is what it's supposed to be. And the only way you get that is to listen, and you got to listen and listen and listen to guys that really have it. You know, but you know, that's pretty much how I approach it. You know. Now, what I will say is my approach to it has more of an R&B slant to it. And that's just because I grew up here in ATL with grits and funk, and you know, and that's my thing. That's my thing, you know what I'm saying? But so it's gonna have some of that in it, you know, and it's great like that because that music is funky. It really is, you know. And so just trying to be as authentic as you possibly can be, you know, really helps out a lot. All right, I'm gonna bring the guys up now, and we'll take some more questions in a minute. How about a hand for Randy? Raphael. Raphael. Not in this man. Not in this one right here. As rough as it gets. All right, let me introduce you to him. Okay, so check. Mike, thanks. I toured Europe with my band, Cache Fusion, last fall. And Darian was on the tour, Sean was on the tour. Randy and Raphael weren't there, but they were there in spirit. But anyway, before that too, I wanted to write some really, some new stuff. And so I hooked up with Randy. We co-wrote a few tunes. And all the tunes that we're going to play tonight are tunes from that tour. This is called Slinky. Check, check, check. Yeah. You need to fix something there? You need more sax? Okay. Okay. Cool. Good. Yeah, that was Slinky. I told you these cats are bad, man. All right. The next composition is entitled Juicy. Cool. Yeah, how about a hand for Randy and Raphael? This is their first time playing these tunes, so I just said it to them. Great job, guys. Great job, man. Good job, Darian. Good job, Sean. So, any questions?
I have a question.
Can I get a little light in the house so I can see the hand? If there are any? Yes.
As a pro musician, what mistakes have you seen other musicians make that may have cost their career, or, proved to be major setbacks that you would like us to avoid as rising musicians?
Yeah, there are lots of those.
Some of the biggest ones that are easy to fall for.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm totally gonna try and do this. I guess the very first thing I would say to you is that for me, music is a gift, okay? And I don't know where you are spiritually, but for me, it's a straight gift from God. So, in nurturing the talent that I've had, I look at it as honoring God. So it begins with you being serious about honoring your gift, okay, and cultivating your gift so that you can become the best that you can possibly become. I've seen everything from not being prepared with the right gear, being late to the gig, not showing up on time, just not knowing the material when you get to the gig. All those things, man, can cost you. Really can cost you. And if you go into a professional situation and you don't know the material, it's going to be completely obvious right away. If you're on the stage with a bunch of pros, like when I'm recording with Steely Dan or rehearsals with Bruce Hornsby or anybody, everybody in the band, they're all professionals. Everybody knows they have the right gear, they know the material. So if you step up in there and you don't know the material, it's going to be completely obvious. And they may not say anything to you about it right away, but they're going to remember it. And they're going to be equally impressed if you walk in there and you know everything. So I guess the most important thing I can impress upon you is to be responsible. Honor your word, man. If you tell a cat you're going to do a gig and it's paying $3, okay, and then a better paying gig comes along, okay, there's a way to handle that situation. You just don't bail on the guy and leave him hanging. You call him and say, hey, man, look, I have a gig, it's paying a little more money. We can all relate to that. We're musicians. If you've been in this game for any amount of time, you know it's not easy to make it. So you have to take advantage of the great situations. Okay, but the thing to do is you got to call the guy that you're supposed to work on, who's supposed to be working with, and at least offer to help him find a sub for his gig, somebody that he's happy with. I've seen a lot of guys just kind of turn their backs on the smaller paying gigs, walk away from it, do this gig over here with this guy, and then next week this guy over here he's the MD for J-Lo all of a sudden. Oh, he's not going to call you because you dogged him. You know what I mean? So it's a lot of that type of stuff will go a long way to help you kind of preserve and create a career. You know what I mean? A lot of guys get in this and they're in it for a little bit of time. I've been blessed to be in the industry for a long time. And that's just, just by the grace of God. And I really make a conscious effort to honor my commitments, and try to do the best I can do when I'm there, be prepared, have the right gear, and be always open to suggestions, constructive criticism. You may think that you're playing the gig right, but if the artist comes up to you, okay, here's a great story. I'm on stage with Bette Midler. We're in Vegas, $10 million set, okay? Just mayhem everywhere, production everywhere, people. She comes up to me in the middle of one of the songs and goes, don't play that one right there. She didn't know what it was. She's pointing to the snare drum. Okay? It's the heart, that's the heart of the drum kit, right? So she leans over, don't play that one, don't play that one, don't play that one. I'm like, she's like, I stopped playing the snare drum. So we're playing it was kind of like a samba tune. So I'm playing just ride cymbal and kick and hi-hat. And it was just really strange to me after a while. So I just put the stick down. I'm like, so finally, she leans over and she says, I just wanted to see what it would sound like without that one. You know what I mean? But in those situations, sometimes people will test you. She was probably looking for me to go, no, don't play it off. Oh, man. And, run off the stage or something. You know what I mean? So you just have to gotta be flexible. You gotta be flexible. Because a lot of times you don't know exactly what they're thinking. They may be trying to get to a certain thing artistically, and you just can't hear it, but you just gotta go along with it, So, and the obvious things like, staying off the drugs, being late when you're on a tour is a no-no. That is a no-no, because you disrespect everybody in the camp when you do that. So if lobby call is 12 o'clock, I'm usually downstairs 10, 15 minutes before it's time for us to go.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That's a good rule of thumb. Early is on time. On time is what? Late. All right? Yeah, so that's a good one to keep in mind. You made it.
I was gonna see, what's your approach when you're playing with the percussionist as far as, especially in the studio and stuff? It's kind of musically how you.
Well, in the studio, it's pretty much the same approach for me. I like playing with cats who listen, because as a musician, I was taught to listen, and right away I know if I'm playing with a good percussionist, because he doesn't try to play all the drum fills. He doesn't try to play, I love playing Raphael for that reason. He knows where his spots are, you know what I mean? He's seasoned enough, he finds his spots, he takes advantage of them. He's out of my way, and it makes the music kind of work. So that's pretty much, my approach. I've been really blessed, man. I work with Alex Acuna, Lenny Castro, Don Elias. I work with some of the best cats in the industry. And I've learned a lot from them. My whole Latin repertoire. And the reason why I play it the way that I do is because I've been surrounded with those guys. When I first moved to LA, I was hanging out with Carlos Vega and Jeff Porcaro and Alex Acuna regularly. You know what I mean? So it's just about a musical match. There are going to be some guys that you just don't mesh with. That's just how it is. You got to find that chemistry. But most of the time, if a guy is really musical and he's listening to what you're doing, he's going to stay out of your way. What inspired me to start playing drums? Well, for me, it's been kind of a thing since birth. I remember as a little boy hanging out with my father. My dad was a musician and was playing pretty consistently every weekend. And he would take me every now and then. And I remember the first time I saw the guy that was playing with him, and he sat down behind the drums, and he hit the kick drum and the cymbal at the same time. I guess he was just trying something. But that sound, I just remember that sound just kind of captivated me, and I was just mesmerized, I want to do that. So I've been doing it since I was a baby, so. But now, great music really motivates me and inspires me, regardless of the genre. It's like if it's really good and if it's put together well, I can get with it. And great players. I love to come. Like today, even the two students that I taught today, I'm inspired because I see that process going. And it just inspires me to continue that process. Because even though I've had the career that I've had, I'm still learning about this instrument. It never stops. It never stops. And the minute you think you're the cat and you have it all together, that's when you will meet the cat who will show you what's up. So it's just one of those situations where you get in and you do the best you can and you learn, you absorb as much as you can, but just remember you're a continuous sponge. You want to continue to learn and continue to be open.
You got any good advice on, as far as the business side of things, as far as making sure, a couple aspects, like making sure you're not taking advantage of in certain situations?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I would say is make sure that you don't double book yourself. That's the first thing I think, that was a real challenge for me when I was in school. Because I was doing sessions every day at Doppler Studios. I was playing at Walter Mitty's 7 nights a week. Walter Mitty's was the premier jazz club here in town at that time. And I was going to school, so I was doing what you guys are doing. I was rehearsing for recitals. I was in concert band. I was playing gigs at night. I was doing sessions during the day. Then I was doing other gigs outside of that. And for me, a couple of times, I kind of double booked myself, and I had to go back and tell somebody I couldn't do the gig, which you don't want to really be in that situation. You know what I mean? So the first advice I can give you, check your schedule. Make sure you're clear to do a gig before you say yes to somebody. Okay? Also, make sure that you know what the average scale for the type of gig that you're doing is. You know what I mean? If you just got called to do a tour, then if it's your first tour, you can't go in there asking for 10 grand a week just because you heard Sonny Emory or Dave Weckl or Vinnie Colaiuta or whoever is making 10 grand a week. Because whoever's gonna hire you, they already know what the scale is, okay? And they already know that, this is your first gig. So just try to price yourself fairly. Don't cheapen yourself though. By the same token, if you go into a situation, you've got some experience and you know what you're worth and you think your price is fair, stick with it. And then I got an attorney. I have an entertainment attorney. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. He handles all of my contractual work. When it gets real deep like that, I just send it to Jess and let him take care of it. I tell him what I want, and he tries to get as much of what I want in the contract before it breaks the deal. But then he'll ask me, hey man, is this a deal breaker? And then you just have to, like I said, you have to be flexible. In the back.
All right, so a lot of times drummers, it's very hard for a first time if they're playing with a percussion player. What are some exercises or some things you do to kind of get yourself familiar with playing it up with another drummer or percussion player, like you and Raphael back and forth? Are there any certain exercises you guys do?
I wouldn't call them exercises. I would call that more practical, everyday, sit down, play. Find somebody that plays percussion, play with them. You know what I mean? Trade fours, trade eights. Get used to having a musical conversation. If you approach it like that, if you know, okay, I'm going to have a conversation with this guy, then you have to give that guy a chance to talk. You're just not going to sit there and just bombard him and not give him a chance to say anything. You know what I mean? So musically, it's the same scenario. You have to give that guy a chance to do it. A way to practice that with percussion, though, is with a sequencer. Do you have a sequencer? Or a drum machine?
I'm not a drummer.
Oh, okay.
I was just curious.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it, though. If you can just set up a percussion pattern, which I do all the time at home on MPC, and just sit down and play with it. Play around it. And that's a good way to have somebody have an instrument there without having to hook up with somebody. But the best way to do it is to just actually hook up and have a conversation. And that's how you really learn it. That's really the only way to do it. Michael Smalls.
Earlier question, maybe the first question was about the clave. Is there any set amount of repetitions you'll do or time that you'll do?
Focusing on one thing?
Yes.
When I practice, let's say when I was doing that, when I was learning that particular technique, I like to just spend at least a good hour on something, saturated. Just really just focus on it for an hour. If I feel good, if I feel fresh enough to keep going, then I will. If I get to that point where I'm trying to do it and every 2 seconds I'm making a mistake, I'm not focusing on it, I get away from it, take a break. Step away from it, take a break, clear your head, and come back to it. That is really different for everybody. I mean, at one point, when I was in school, I was practicing like 8-10 hours a day.
That was the next
Yeah. But but that was just like, but that's not, I mean, that wasn't all just 8 hours straight, you know, that was like maybe an hour here, 2 hours later, day 3, 4, you know. So it just depends on what your schedule will allow you to do. You know, I tell all of my students, man, a good solid 30 minutes every day is better than 5 minutes here and then going 3 weeks without touching the instrument. You can't do that. You know, you won't make any progress like that.
Okay. What are some of your favorite rudiments to use for fills? You know, just a couple of them. And how do you employ them around the drum set?
Yeah, I love flams. I love flams. I love all of them actually. I'm a rudiment junkie. So I try to use as many of them as I can. Flams. Also like to put, you can put drags on the front of like a flam accent. All right, that's your basic flam accent. You know, rudiments are really where it's at, man. Fundamentally, whatever you want to say on the drum set is pretty much a rudiment. So the more you have those down, the more you're able to speak and communicate across the drums. You know what I mean? Interesting way, flam accent, right? Sometimes I'll use this when I'm playing a shuffle. So. We do a tune with Britt Darian called Freeway Jam, and it's a shuffle like that. And I'll start it out sometimes, and I use it all the time. So, I mean, it's a lot that you can do. You know, when you break them up between the instruments, it sounds really heavy. All right. All right, that's a cool one too. Actually, Juicy, when I started kind of putting together the rhythmic palette for that, all that is parodies on the back side and the kick on 2 and 4. So you got 1, 2, Yeah, that's ultra important. This question is, should I talk about the importance of the pocket? Yes, I can. As a drummer, sometimes, especially nowadays, I think there's a new epidemic going on where cats are trying to play as many notes as they can play. But I got a secret to tell you, okay? A lot of times, if you're on these bigger gigs, you're not even gonna have a chance to use that stuff. And to get the gig, that's not what's gonna be important, okay? I did stints with Cameo, and that is just straight up meat and potatoes. So you gotta learn how to just sit in the pocket and let the groove marinate. And when you fall in love with that, then that's when you're playing really matures, because then you know when to use all of the stuff, you know, and that's when it really makes sense. So the pocket is ultra important, ultra important. Feel is too. Like a lot of times you have to really think about the feel of a song before you start playing it. You know, to me, that's one of the things that makes Steve Gadd, Jeff Porcaro, Carlos Vega, all those kind of guys. That is really what sets them apart from the rest of the bunch to me. Dennis, I mean, you know, when Dennis is in the funk, dude, it's over, because he's deep in it, you know. So that's really important. It's really important. The best way to do that, and just like I practice all the rudiments and all the fast stuff and all the flashy stuff, I'll sit at home and do this. Let's do. Yeah, I want to do something a little more R&B-ish. Let's do. Yeah. So check it out. The reward there is when you look out, okay? And I learned this doing those gigs. When you look out there and you see 20,000 people bobbing their head to your groove, then you know you're the man. All right, so keep that in mind when you're playing, okay? Because the groove is a powerful thing, man. When you lock it up like that and you don't interrupt it with all these fills every 2 or 3 minutes, you got it. That's it. That's the key. All right? We're going to do, any more questions? Any other questions? All right, we're going to do one more song for you. First of all, I'd like to thank Tom Knight and all the staff here at AIM for inviting me out, man. I'd like to thank Randy for hooking us up for me. And this last tune is entitled Feeling Hot. Darian Emory, Randy Hoexter, Raphael, Pereira, Sean Michael Ray. I'm Sonny. Thanks so much for coming out.